What's up, everybody? It's Matt. We are going to do a review of the Airsoft GI Mayo Gang MK2. You're not going to want to miss this if you are a Lancer tactical guy. And if you're a fan of Mayo Gang, you're really going to want to pay attention to this video because we're going to go over the gun. We're going to go over some tips and tricks to make this gun way more operational and professional from the get-go, and my general thoughts on the sport of airsoft and how it's evolved over the amount of time I've been playing, which is over 20 years now, believe it or not. So let's get right into it. What we are reviewing today is the Mayo Gang MGC4 MK2. And this gun is fresh out of the box. I just got it in today, February 21st, 2025. And my first impressions of this thing are, pretty solid. The majority of this gun is metal, which is great. There were some things that right out of the box we had to tweak to make this gun up to my standard to be able to run it hard, like run the piss out of these things, which is what you're going to do when you play airsoft. You're going to run these things real hard. You're going to fall. You're going to drop your guns. You're going to otherwise do everything in your power to destroy these things while you're playing. Not saying that that's your goal, but it's just going to happen. So let's get right down into it and talk about what I really like about this gun. So the Mayo Gang MK2, and there was also an MK1, but I got the MK2. There's also, I believe, MK3s out for various other configurations, but this was the one I really wanted to go with. It's on Airsoft GI right now, I think for under $300 stock, and it's not bad, guys. So one of the things that you got to do right off the bat whenever you get an airsoft gun is you got to get rid of that orange flash hider. This is the flash hider that comes with the Predator MK3 by Ace Tech. This is the BB Tracer flash forward configuration with the QD mount that goes onto your rifle just like that. Very, very solid piece of gear right here. This is aluminum or billeted. It's metal. All of these components are metal. So this thing was put together very easy, nice and easy QD right there. And we'll get into that in a second. But this is the flash suppressor that comes with the mock suppressor, but it's really just a BB Tracer illuminator. And this is metal, so get rid of your orange tip. Not saying you have to, but if you're going to be playing games, you're going to want to change that out. So you might as well do it. It comes with a different flash suppressor. It's a pretty beefy, thick square boy that looks really good, but I'm running the mock suppressor, so we're using that. Now, I think there's a couple of videos out there, and this is definitely not a how-to video for a lot of the stuff that I'm going to be talking about, like a direct how-to for this, but getting rid of these orange flash suppressors is a bitch. It's a nightmare if you don't do it correctly, and it can take you forever. So here is the trick for this. Whenever you get a brand new gun, you're going to find that there usually is a tap somewhere excuse me, somewhere in that muzzle suppressor or flash hider or whatever you want to call it. But most of the time, that tap is a pin. It's not threaded for a hex wrench. So here's the real easy way to get that off. Go get a drill, get a 1/16 drill bit, or get a Dremel and drill around that pin. Make a nice little hole around that pin, big enough for needle nose pliers to get into. Pop that pin out, then get a heat gun You can get one of those at a Harbor Freight for like $12 and warm it up. It's going to take you about a minute to warm the whole thing up, and then you can literally screw it off with your hand. Don't do anything else because you could damage the threads. You don't want to do that. Very easy. 1/16 Dremel heat gun. Pop it off. It will take you less than 5 minutes to do it correctly. Please do that and do it correctly. It's a pain in the ass. I hate how these guns come with orange tips. They've been like that since the beginning, and I'm sure there's a lot of reasons for it. Nobody wants to get shot by a police officer because you're brandishing something that looks exactly like the real steel counterpart. But you got to get rid of it for the games. So that's the first thing. The second thing is out of the box, I noticed that the free float rail system that's on this, which it is a pretty true to spec free float, was a little too floaty, if you catch my drift. And that's a huge problem if you're running things like PECs or lights, lasers. Anything that is mounted to the free float is going to shift, and you're going to get less accuracy out of your alignments for your lasers, whether that's infrared or visual. Now we're talking airsoft, so does it really matter? Well, after about 50 yards, probably not. But if you're doing CQB, anything indoors, if you're running in indoor arenas, you really want to pay attention to this, which is on the Mayo Gang, the free float rail system is attached with these two hex locks right here. And the system is pretty well designed to mimic that real steel counterpart. But what I would tell you is that first and foremost, let me back up. Take this off before you work on this. When you're replacing that orange tip, it's gonna save you a ton of time trying to get those tools around the top. You're gonna scratch or indent this free float rail. If you don't, pop it off. And then when you put it back on, and here's the tip, is get some Loctite. I believe it's the blue, not the red. The red is permanent. The blue you can get rid of, or it's vice versa. Somebody correct me. But either way, I put blue on there, and you want to lock this bad boy in literally with as much hand torque pressure as you can put on it with those threads Loctited. The reason for this is that is going to make this free float rail system very, very solid. Coming from the factory, this thing was loose as a goose, and that's a huge problem for me. I'm not going to be able to run this gun hard with a loose free float rail system. In addition, it's going to mess up any of your lights or lasers or whatever you have mounted, D-balls, PECs, whatever that you've got going on this thing. In addition, it's also could potentially change that front sight post picture to the rear sight post when you are gunning. And a lot of us old school guys, it's weird to even say that, but a lot of us old school guys still use the ring method. When we go to put this in our shoulder, we're still ringing that towel, so to speak. And when you do that, you're putting torque on the free float rail system, which could change sight alignment, sight picture, as well as laser for IR, red, or whatever you're running in your lights. So that is something that I highly recommend, is that you get this thing squared away after you get this thing squared away on the Mayo Gang. And it does lock down extremely, extremely tight. I have been fidgeting with this thing all day trying to ring it, and it's just not going to go. In addition, and you probably can't see this too well, but right in here where the free float rail system connects, it actually has indents in here that go past and beyond the barrel lock. And that's really good. That's a really good design feature, mimicking real steel, that allows you to ensure that once this thing is seated properly, it stays seated. And when you put that Loctite on there, it's not going anywhere. You can start to abuse this thing the way that you should be able to abuse it, just like your real steel counterpart. So those are the two things that I'd start with. The second thing that I noticed on this is that it's really noisy. This thing is super noisy, and there's two culprits to that. One is the battery assist over here. You hear that? That's horrible. That thing is so loose. I will be fixing that with a nice dollop of super glue behind that button. There is quite enough space that you can stick back there a Q-tip with some super glue on that and just glue it down. It's not going to matter. It's non-functional. You can't use it. So either get rid of it or glue it down. And I plan on gluing it down because, it's nice to have that aesthetic there. The second big noisy thing back here is going to be your stock. And it's a multi-positional stock, just like every other gun known to man. But there's an easy fix for that. In the way that you do this is when you take this thing off, you put a piece of tape right here, duct tape. I'm probably going to use electrician's tape. You put down one layer, put it back on, listen for the rattle, put on another layer if needed. You keep doing that process until the rattling stops. You want to make sure you can still slide your buttstock back on, but that will fix that rattle. It'll get rid of it, and you won't have to worry about it. It will also give you just a little bit more of assurance when you're using this and employing this weapon system, because it's going to get rid of the rattle. It's also going to get a bit of a little bit of that play. You don't really feel this much, but it does exist. So you want to make sure that you are knocking both of those birds out with a piece of tape. And since we're back here in the rear, I'm going to show you that this is quite a big battery component, and the connectors for this are very long. They're long enough to be able to plug in your lipos and shove that stick down in there and then push all that wiring back in there. This wiring is going to stick out a little bit. And the battery, especially those long lipos, the 11.1s, are going to stick out a little bit. But trust me, you can get all of that crumpled up, nice and tight, packed in there to be able to get your buttstock back on appropriately. Other than that, one of the big issues that I've always had with a lot of airsoft guns over the last 20 years is that the pistol grip, where the motor is, right down in here, this is kind of always loose with a lot of other guns. This thing is rock solid. There is zero play in this pistol grip motor configuration going up into the rest of the rifle system here. You're not going to get any play out of the Mayo Gang. None. Zero play here. Very solid. You can feel the strength that they've designed into this weapon system with this pistol grip motor configuration. And I really like that because it tells me that the engineering for this has very tight tolerances. And the tighter your tolerances are on your airsoft gun, the better it's going to perform. This thing, you can go to the website and look at all of the various things that this rifle or Mayo Gang is claiming that it has, which is quite a bunch of things that it's saying that it can do on the upgrades, and they're all there. It is very, 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 very tight tolerance with the gearbox to the rest of the weapon system. So out of the box, I've probably had in my life maybe 10 to 15 different airsoft systems, running from gas systems to lipo. And this is one of the more solidly constructed airsoft weapons that I've placed my hands on and purchased in a long time, which leads me to the couple of other things that I would say that you need to do immediately. I'm a big iron sights guy. You need to know how to shoot iron sights before you do anything else in life, whether that's real steel or airsoft. But you really can't beat a nice red dot reticle. This is the Lancer Tactical, can't remember the name of it, square faced red dot reticle. I think they're about 70 or 80 bucks on Airsoft GI. And I would never, ever run this thing on real steel, ever. If this design was available for real steel, I would never buy it. But this is an airsoft gun, and this thing is perfect for airsoft play. The reason why I would never buy this thing for real steel or use it on real steel is for a couple of reasons. One, your windage and elevation are right out in the open. You probably can't see this, but right here, there's a screw for your windage, and then on the back, there's another screw for your elevation, and those are flathead and they are wide out in the open. There's no way in hell I would ever run this on real steel. But airsoft, who cares, right? We're out here to have fun, and the thing works exactly as described on the website. On the rear of this sight, there is a little button right here that is very cheap. It's a very cheap housing button that gives you two options, bright and brighter, and then off, of course. But the reason why I say it's cheap is because it's an external button. It's not an internal button to the CNC'd metal. And that little difference is going to change everything. And I'm not talking about just the button. I'm talking about the whole button housing. And that leaves it open for exposure to being ripped off accidentally, especially if you're wearing gloves, you're in a high stress environment, you're running and gunning. You got to change your visibility for that red dot. And this, another reason why this thing would suck for real steel is when you are getting sight alignment and sight picture through that sight window, you can see the halo from where the laser is being emitted in onto the lens. And it is a halo that takes up the peripheral, almost the entire outer quadrants of the sight box, in addition to the red dot, which you're only supposed to see the red dot, not the halo. But again, it's not real steel, it's airsoft. And for $70, this thing rocks and rolls. It has a, again, flathead QD toggle right here, or screw, which you can hand jam. And it has a riser built in. You can get rid of that riser. So those three opened machined ports that you can see through, you can get rid of that riser if you want. You can keep it in, especially if you're going to be running lasers and all sorts of other stuff up front, like your backup irons and things like that. I kept it in because I am running those things, but you can take it out if you wanted to make it more slick to the mounting rail. And it does co-witness very well. So your front sights and rear sights can co-witness with this optic extremely well. And in fact, it's probably one of the best ways for you to get the BZO out of your optic first before you move to an LBS, or you just get visual feedback from shooting tracers or regular rounds on target. Speaking of the BZO, there's a lot of different ways that you can BZO in real life on real steel, but airsoft, everything has to be taken down a couple pegs because it's not real steel and it's BBs we're dealing with. So the first thing that you want to do is open that ejection port cover, and with that open, you can see very clearly probably not in my lighting, but there is that hop-up dial that's in there, the trusty hop-up dial. This thing came from the factory, hop up all the way down. So it was maxed to the down position. You're going to probably, if you do get this weapon system, you're probably going to have to do what I did and spend some time dialing in that hop up. I would say that for a rifle like this, the best BZO you're looking for is that 25 to 50 yard BZO. Almost if you're doing a BZO with the real rifle, but again, variations in everything about this gun is going to change up that configuration for accuracy downrange. This thing can punch out very far, but you start getting that cone of fire, and that cone is really big with airsoft guns. So you're looking for being able to put BBs in a plate, get a paper plate. And if you can put those BBs in a paper plate at 50 through your BZO and your hop-up adjustments, as well as your sight adjustments, you're doing really good. And speaking of BZOs, you can also BZO your lasers. Now, the way you do this is depending upon the laser and how true to real steel it is, you can go and download PEC BZO sheets. So basically, you're going to go and just search for a PEC BZO sheet or PDF. You're going to find a bunch of different ones. Try to get one as accurate to the configuration of your laser that you're running as possible. I haven't looked to see if this particular one, which is mocked after a PEC 15, whether or not those exist for this particular brand. But if I know I can find the PEC 15 BZO sheets for this. And then you are going to want to do a indoor is the best way to do it, to do an indoor BZO with this particular platform. And all that is you're going to mount that sheet to a flat wall, 15, 25 yards, whatever the sheet tells you the distance is, that's how far out you're going to go. You're going to get in a laser bore sight. I know that's a pain in the ass. You probably don't have one, and maybe it doesn't matter. You're thinking, I don't need one. But if you're really trying to dial this thing in as best as accurate as possible, you're going to want to do this. And then pay attention to the configuration, because that sheet will have a bunch of different quadrants dependent upon how you mount this. So there'll be a top quadrant, a left quadrant, and a right quadrant that changes up where your lasers are supposed to align within the circles of that PDF sheet that you've got placed out there. And that LBS is going to give you that bore center so you can correctly offset your PEC, because your PEC laser is not actually going to match your bore laser. And that, I know that sounds counterintuitive, but the way that these BZOs or sight ends for these optics work is that it's not going to match, because you have variations in rail heights and configurations around your rails. And when you shoot, it will be accurate, especially if you do real steel. You'll see that it actually works. It's accurate. But yeah, so that's what you can do to dial this in. Then on the same exact target, you can also dial in your red dot or whatever else, what other optic you have, if you haven't already done so. And I'll tell you right now that the pop-up backup irons that are on this right here, the ones that come from Lancer Tactical, are dog shit. And it's not because they weren't designed well. The function is not like your mag pools or basically any other kind of backup irons that you're going to get. These levers right here are not intuitive. You think you would just do down, but you have to do back. And that is something that I guess is new, or maybe proprietary to Lancer, but it's not it's at least not what I have ever experienced in the world of shooting real steel or airsoft. And they're only on here because they came with the gun, but they will be getting replaced. And I'll also tell you, if you're going to be running a red dot, a laser system up top, you might not be able to see it, but that is a fat, fat backup iron sight up there, and that gets in the way of your lasers and your lights. So either get rid of them or find skinnier ones. Magpul makes skinnier ones. Some other companies, I can't remember the name of them right now, they make some really skinny ones. Get those, especially if you're going to be running your lasers on top of that weapon system. If you mount it to the left, mount it to the right, not going to matter. But I like to run it up top because it gives you a better grip, ease of use, access, and I can quickly thumb that if I don't want to use the pressure bar that comes with it. So all in all, this thing right out of the box is 9 out of 10, super, super solid weapon. The only thing that I would suggest Mayo Gang pays attention to and any MK additions is that their QC out of the factory, I would ask for them to tighten down all of these things a little bit more, maybe take a little play out of the Chinese butt stocks that come with these, and then do something about the battery assist, because that's horrible. But again, guns, this is a fun gun, right? These are toys we go out to train and practice and have fun. And this is going to achieve that, and it's going to achieve it for under $300. With the laser system and the optic, we're looking at $450. So for an entry level, for a guy getting into airsoft, or an individual looking to add something to their portfolio of weapon systems to be able to employ, this thing is not bad for $450, and you're going to have a lot of fun with it. And one of the things I didn't even mention is the trigger. So the trigger on this thing is a flat trigger, and with a extra wide mouthed finger hole for when you're wearing gloves. That's kind of standard for all black guns now. But it's a good touch. It's definitely helpful. It's useful, but the damn trigger is so good, guys. Like, this thing is crispy. It is so snappy, so reactive and light. I've shot a lot of lipo in my time, and this one has the fastest, hardest, solid reset that you're ever going to get out of single fire. And the rate of fire for fully auto is nuts. It is absolutely nuts. The gun moves, and you're definitely going to be able to throw BBs downrange to achieve your objective. And very happy with that trigger. Very, very happy. The whole system that they've designed in here for the internals, the motor, the trigger, I don't know all the parts of what an airsoft gun is called, but where all the gears work and the trigger connects, it's the most solid thing on this gun, which is the most important, of course, for longevity. And yeah, that sucker is really, 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 really good, guys. So all in all, 9 out of 10. You're really going to enjoy the Mayo Gang MK2. I'm sure the MK3 is even better. And I would highly suggest, if you're getting an airsoft, or you are looking to pick up a gun to get back in airsoft, or you're just looking for a nice field gun that also can handle CQB, this is a pretty good buy, solid buy. Lots of metal, tight triggers, tight tolerances on the gearbox, and right out of the box, the thing's rad, and definitely happy with it. So moving on to a couple of other things, which is going to be this Predator MK3 by Ace Tech. This is a or yeah, it's a suppressor, but it's electronic, so it also has built into it all the electronics, so it acts like a tracer. And then on the front end, it also has the illuminator lights to give off that muzzle flash, to simulate the muzzle flash, which again, uh real steel suppressors um are not going to give off the same amount of light that these three LEDs put out. But it's cool, it's fun. It's fun. But I really wanted this because I wanted to actually start running tracer rounds when I play. And I might do this a little differently than most people, which is I think most people, at least from what I'm seeing, are loading up a whole mag. Speaking of mags, I picked up 10 of these Lancer Tactical 130 mid caps. These have some cool features, which is that really big, if you can kind of see it, the almost half triangle shape down here. It's supposed to be so you can keep that level when you are in the prone or putting your weapon system on something, and it works out well. But they've also added a really cool little slot down there. I don't know if you can see it, where you can mark it with a paint pen. I mark everything with paint pens, guys. That's another tip for you. Every single piece of gear you have, you need to mark it with a paint pen so you know it's your shit, because you're going to drop these. But getting back to the point, I like to simulate realistic tracer rounds, which is 1 out of every 5 or 1 out of every 7. So you do the math. You got 130. Just say out of, let's do 1 out of 10. That means that you're putting in anywhere between 10 and 30 tracer rounds into your mags when you load them up. That way you're not just creating this constant stream of tracer rounds that lead right back to you. It looks cool. Man, does it look cool, but it is not really tactically sound. So if you start mixing up your tracer rounds in with regular BBs, you can still push them through your tracer unit, whatever that unit is, if you have one. But it's going to be more realistic to simulate real steel, because you're not going to load up tracers in every single round in real life. And you can mimic that in the world of airsoft. And that turns out to be a lot more tactically accurate and proficient, and it gives you the best of both worlds. And again, this thing is exceptionally sturdy. Like, you could potentially hit somebody with just this unit and do some real damage because of the way that they have ported the end of this thing. It's real aggressive, real sharp edges up here. So you could use this to mash. Not saying you should, but things happen. So that's, and then one more thing, another tip I would give you guys, which I will be doing before I go play, is everything that is not native to this weapon system out of the box gets dummy corded. You need to dummy cord your PEC. You need to dummy cord your optic. And you need to make sure that those are tight. Very easy, 550 cord. Wrap that around the PEC unit. Go in through the ports of that free float barrel. Tie it off real tight. Cut it real tight to the rail system. Use a lighter. Crisp it. Get that little nice plastic melt. Smudge it with your finger to get it real knotted up and tight in there for both of these. And now you have your stuff dummy corded in the event you're running and gunning and boop, it pops off, which this stuff is probably going to pop off eventually, if not sooner than later, because of the way that they have this QD'd on here. And then for this particular PEC, the teeth that bite onto the rail system here, they're not that great. It is metal, but it's just that they don't connect that well. Not saying that it's bad. It's just, again, you paid $70 for this. You paid $70 for this. You don't want to go missing this at a range, not a range day, at a game or a match. Somebody picks it up, throws in their drop pouch, and you're out. So if you dummy cord it, you can be a dummy. and you can lose it, but it's going to stay on that weapon system, and you'll know immediately. You can still continue to fight, get through that engagement, go back and fix it when you have time, but you're not going to lose your shit. And nobody wants to lose their stuff when they're out playing. So, yeah, the sport has evolved tremendously in the last 20 years. When I started playing this, it was 2002, out there in Jacksonville, North Carolina, at I think it's Southfield Airsoft, the one right off of Geiger New River Air Station. And I've played with some of the best actual shooters in the world, right? We get to play against Marines. I was a kid back then. I was like 13, 14 when I started this. And that's where I fell in love with the game, especially the outdoor field game. The outdoor field game is my jam. I can do CQB, but outdoor is where you really get to learn all of the tactics that eventually will bleed into going and clearing houses, which is never fun in real life, and not something that you want to do constantly. But with all that being said, with this gun, I'd feel very capable doing either mission, and you will too. So if you like what you see, let me know. Let me know down in the comments your thoughts. If anything I said is conflicting, give me some feedback. And hope you guys continue to enjoy the game of Airsoft. I've been buying from Airsoft GI for almost as long as I've been playing Airsoft, and they never let me down. They really produce some good gear. And Lancer Tactical has just blown me out of the water. I mean, everything on this gun except for the PEC is Lancer. All my mags are Lancer. The lipos are Lancer. I'm a Lancer guy now. I'm sold. I was KWA for years. Loved my KWAs, but Lancer's got it. They got the market. So again, let me know your thoughts. Let me know what you're thinking. If you've got any feedback. And one last round for you before we depart. Make sure that you're checking the websites, because for these tracer units, because not all tracer units can do all colored BBs. The Predator here cannot do red for some reason. Really weird. At least that's what the manual says. And the website Airsoft GI doesn't say that. So I bought a bunch of red tracers because that's real steel, and don't know if I can shoot it or not. So if you have done that and you can shoot through the Predator, let me know before I go hit the field. But all right, guys, hopefully you enjoyed the video, and if you did, let me know.